Welcome to the Fitness Plus Technology Podcast for club owners, operators, and fitness professionals. Each week, host Bryan O'Rourke brings you an expert interview with a global influencer at the crossroads of fitness and technology. You gain the insights, tools, and inspiration you need to stay connected to the pulse for what matters most for your business in the age of exponential technologies.
Hello, listeners. Thanks for joining us on the Fitness Plus Technology Podcast. I hope you're preparing to see me and all of our other colleagues at IRSA in San Diego in early mid-March, let's say. I hope you will see you there. Check out my site for some special codes to get you in. I hope we see you there. In the interim, I had the opportunity to visit with my great friend, David Minton, with the Leisure Database Company out of the UK. David's been a dear friend and colleague for many years and is a foremost expert on the industry, not only in the UK, but also globally. We are in Bologna, Italy, which is fantastic, by the way, and was able to join the ForumClub event here for their 20th anniversary, where David and I sat on a panel with other terrific leaders in the space. He's going to share views on this and other views around the UK market and what's happening and trends, etc. Had a great presentation at the event. You can find it online, and I hope you do. So without further ado, you're going to listen to David and I talking about the event at the Grand Majestic Hotel in Bologna, where we had a nice lunch and a great visit. So I hope you enjoyed. Thanks. Welcome, listeners. I did the intro on David Minton. David's been a friend for many years, and you heard the intro. So we're sitting here at the Grand Majestic Hotel in Bologna. We had a wonderful lunch, David, with your wife, Ruth, and Maureen, which I really enjoyed. Had a little wine. It's great being in Italy. Don't you agree, David?
It's just wonderful. It's my favorite country.
And yesterday was Valentine's Day, and you were telling me about Saint Valentino, right?
Yeah, San Valentino, 469 AD. Yeah, it all starts here.
And we talked about the Italians. They know how to live.
They've worked it out over 2,000 years, so that there's a balance in their lives, there's a balance in their food, there's a balance in their drinks.
Yeah. Indeed. And so people, listeners, you may want to know what we're doing here. I mentioned in the intro. So this is the 20th year of the ForumClub event. And I know David's spoken here many times, and they were kind enough to invite me. David and I sat on a panel together with Florio and Christian and yourself and I. Edo did a great job at facilitating. What was your impression of the conversation?
I think the Italians are really, they're well known for design. They're well known for having some great clubs. But it's very mar and par. They've got, they think, in between 6,000 and 7,000 clubs. And most of them are just single sites. There are very few brands in Italy, which is really strange because there are Italian brands that are so famous in fashion that are all over the world. And yet the Italians haven't come up with an Italian brand that we think of automatically, except Technogym.
Of course. And Techno, close by. It's kind of ironic since Da Vinci was born, maybe 100 kilometers away? I don't know, in Vinci. Yeah. And you have Techno here, which is the second largest equipment supplier in the world in that kind of environment. That's kind of an interesting dichotomy in a way, right?
Yeah. And it's just an hour to the Wellness Village down the Autostrada. Nerio hasn't actually invited us, but hey, we're maybe another time.
Yeah, and that's fine. I know they have a big event this weekend coming up, they told me, but they were kind enough to sponsor some things here. So in our conversation, and I know you did some presentation work here, I did too, and some of the questioning was around this whole technology thing, and you being a guy that really has talked a lot about data, and people hear the term data. And, being a person involved in operations and businesses, and you're very informed in your expertise and your advisory role with so many companies, What are your thoughts on that for the listeners? Because you had a lot of very interesting insights that you shared with the group when we talked. So I want to, for our listeners, I want them to understand some of your viewpoints on data and what it means.
So I think generally speaking, the industry has a real problem with data. It doesn't want to share it. It doesn't really want to understand the methodology behind it. And it doesn't want to agree an overall understanding of what general terms like what is a member, what does that actually mean?
That's very interesting. And when you say that, like, what is a member and what does it mean? I've talked to you about the digital divide where, or we were just talking about Apple, that if they did their data analysis strictly on a store by store level, maybe it wouldn't make any economic sense. So when you say, what does data mean? Are you saying their view is too myopic, or what do you mean by that?
Well, I don't think that we're taking a wider view of education in the industry. So there are too many suppliers that don't follow through with education. And it's a real shame. And again, if we look to retail and if we look to the people like Apple, then they just give education away. And the younger generation only want a product that you're getting loads of free education with. And our industry are just not educating. They're not even the people that are using it, let alone the masses that aren't using it.
And education, the way we talked about frictionless commerce, frictionless experience, education is almost really the best form of marketing, right?
Yeah. And sadly, there are not many organizations in our industry that are totally frictionless. And there are too many barriers to participation. And one of the biggest barriers is the lack of education and the lack of knowledge. And so, if we're going to the cinema, how easy it is to find where the cinema is and then just press the button and pay by Apple. In our industry, there are too many barriers to finding where we can participate and then to pay for it.
Yes, the other thing that you mentioned during our talk, which I really liked, and is the storytelling narrative. And you shared a great example of the storytelling. As you know, we talked about, we have our own marketing agency. We're working with a number of brands that we own and work with. And the whole storytelling thing is so important. And then you went into the details behind your experience at a very well-known cycling brand in the UK and London. And so can you share that? I know the listeners would love to hear that.
Okay. So with if we're going out in London, then we think about the food that we're going to eat and the provenance of that food. We think about what we're going to drink, and there are microbreweries, and we know the story behind those. And we think about the wine, and every bottle of wine's got a story. And yet our industry has few stories. And I think that the people who work in our industry need to think about how they are going to sell the industry, because people love stories.
I agree with that. And I love your story about your experience in the boutique studio, where you showed up on time, but you didn't get done enough. They locked the door. Yeah. And that's in Rebel One, right? Yeah. And you talked about the fact that even though that happened to you, what the staff did on the spot to take care of you.
Yeah. So first of all, I have to thank Taylor, who's on the front desk, because I thought 5 minutes would be plenty of time to get changed and get into for my first trip at One Rebel Victoria. I mentioned One Rebel Victoria just simply because Technogym are going to be starting to broadcast from there next month. And I thought that would be interesting to the people in Bologna to know that. And on my first experience, I missed the deadline by 1 minute, and the door was closed. And so I felt really quite downhearted because I had to go back up to the changing room, have a shower, and I hadn't even... I just felt like a fraud, So I got changed, I came back down, and these girls just made my day. One had made a milkshake for me, And the other one said, okay, we're going to sort it for you so that you can come for another ride. So that's what happened. I went back, got the ride in, and now I'm a big ambassador for with that brand and those girls.
And that's a great story, Dave. And especially in light of the fact that I think that the UK is probably the most competitive market in the world. In London, I know there's several hundreds. Your recent report,
276.
yeah, and you did phenomenal on this boutique report that I read that you did at the end of the last year, just not that long ago. And I really recommend listeners in the show notes. You're going to see the link to this report. You need to get it because it's going to teach you a lot of stuff. David's company, they really get into data. They do a lot of insights. Tell the audience a couple of key stats here because they're mind-blowing.
Yeah, so 276 studios and over 15,000 classes a week. So that means that there are hundreds of thousands of Londoners actually paying in between £8 and £30 just for one class.
That's amazing. And, the thing I think, that we share, and by the way, wonderful to see you here in Italy. I always enjoy, one of the best parts of traveling is seeing people like you who I admire so much. One of the best points, I think, on our roundtable was, I think, our shared view that while it's very competitive in the market's ratcheting up, customer expectations ratcheting up, is there's so much opportunity for people that really understand what to do. Like if they're paying attention. Don't you share that view, right?
I share that view, and that's one of the reasons why I think it's great to be in Italy at this time, because when you go to an Italian restaurant, you're never oversold. And because you're undersold every time, but the expectation is so wonderful for next time, that it's great great business. They understand business. So it's great that we're here for this particular event.
Yeah, it's a great event. What would be any kind of last words of wisdom or pearls of wisdom you might share with the audience? We've got about 10,000 people a week that listen to this, David, and I know you're very loved and known around the world for your insights. Any little secret tidbits that you'd want to share that people might find interesting?
It's not so much a secret, but I think that currently we're in the biggest change that we've ever had. And because of that change, there is huge opportunity.
Yeah, I agree with that. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening. David Minton from Bologna, the Grand Majestic Hotel, after a wonderful lunch. We drank a little bit of wine. There you go for everybody. David and I promise when we do these podcasts, we're going to have a glass of wine together, which I've done on a few other podcasts, but not as well as with David. David, thank you so much for making time.
Bryan.
Always a pleasure.
Bryan, it's a pleasure. And thanks for listening.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Hi, everyone. This is Bryan O'Rourke again. Thanks for listening to the podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. The podcast is brought to you by the Fitness Industry Technology Council, as well as my company, Videri Ventures, Moon Mission Media, and others. We hope you enjoyed the content. Please feel free to share it and join us again soon when we bring to you another leader in the fitness space talking about technology and what it means to our industry. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you again very soon.